Many of the conversations we've already had tonight are extremely relevant to the work that this committee has been doing and has already issued reports on, but I want to highlight just a couple more tonight and dive a little bit deeper. The critical technologies that our private sector really produces and develops are essential to national security, but we are hindering our own ability to innovate when there are those blatant thefts happening by the PRC on our IP. Those efforts undercut our industry, as has already been discussed, and really roadblock us from being able to lead in these fields. I want to hit on one company in particular, Huawei. U.S. patent grants for Huawei are at over 300 per year, among the most to receive U.S. patents, even ahead of some of our very own largest tech companies here in the U.S. It's extremely concerning to me that a company like Huawei, which is on our Export Administration Regulations designated entity list, continues to expand its use of our patent system. So my first question, Mr. Wolf, do you see actions like this from Huawei and other CCP-affiliated companies as a deliberate strategy to utilize our U.S. patent system?
I think it's a tactic that's deployed, whether it's intentionally deliberate, combination of profit and market share seeking, I'm not sure, but I do see it as a threat.
Have you seen any companies that you've looked to invest in be overrun by Huawei in its efforts to get those patents?
We have not.
Okay. Mr. Avenina, my next question for you. We obviously see the risks that U.S. companies are continuing to take when looking to work within China or with Chinese businesses, and you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but it's inherent that the PRC has purposely developed domestic laws to compel companies to share their IP and their data with the government in order to be able to operate in China. Many of the hardware and the software manufacturers that our government and security systems rely on, frankly, have unacceptable exposure to China, in my mind, from either the source code sharing with the PRC in exchange for that market access, or, as we've seen, down to logos being copied and pasted, blatant manufacturing theft here. Would you consider this a gap in our ability to really monitor critical supply chains? How can we better enforce the laws that we have on the books that really can promote vendors with a strong supply chain security here and people who are maybe even refusing to share that source code with the CCP?
Thanks, Congresswoman. I think you get to a point on your questioning that I think, with respect to juxtaposing Huawei into these current questions, I think when we look at the requirement for general counsels of companies and CIOs and CISOs to really understand the complexity of these Chinese laws that have been enacted since 2017, how they impact not only their business model for doing business supply chain, but their vendors' supply chain. Oftentimes they might say, oh, well, it's not our data. Well, it is your data because you're allowing your supply chain vendor into your data. And that data is now obligated to go from that Chinese-based company or partner to the Communist Party of China or the Ministry of State Security at their beckoning call. And that, I think that's oftentimes a criticality of the General Counsel to understand that before they enter into an agreement with a company from China.
It's the onion. Peel back the layers of the onion and then you get there, right? My last question for Ms. Gorman, specific to AI. I know we've talked about that a little bit tonight. Generative AI has a wealth of attention right now, and I know many conversations are happening here in Congress about what types of programs we need to be looking at, and specifically what types of programs our adversaries are investing in. And when we look at the strong emphasis that China has on dominating the AI space, particularly with the Beijing Academy's AI goal of being the top development institution for these technologies, what do you see as the major implications here? What role can this committee have in developing policy in this space? And do you see China as taking a role in spreading the surveillance state globally as a major threat and concern?
I do. It's certainly a major threat and concern. It's happening, led by companies like Huawei, where AI applications are being built on top of 5G infrastructure. And these digital technology stacks build on each other. And so competitive advantages and market dominance in one layer leads to further dominance in the next layers up, including the AI applications. And so when it comes to generative AI, China is very interested in some sense catching up with the United States on large language models like the ChatGPTs and the Midjourneys and the DALL-Es that have taken the world by storm. China is also hampered by the fact that it can't scrape all the data in the world because it includes mentions of the Chinese Communist Party officials.
Right, so they're restrictive because of their own restrictions.
Our openness is really an advantage, but I think one thing this committee could do, and that doesn't get enough attention, is beyond just the text the text bots and the chat bots, using generative AI in all areas of science to enable scientific discovery in medicine, in health, in energy. This is all data as well. And so I think that's really an open sky area that our system is ripe to explore.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Brown is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Gallagher.